When the car crashed into us, my boyfriend protected my cousin. He just let my leg be crushed. After the emergency treatment, Mom burst into tears when she saw my bloody broken leg. Ava, since you're in such a state now, just help your cousin. She really likes Oscar. They will take care of you together in the future. Looking at the official announcement photo of my boyfriend hugging my cousin after their narrow escape, my tears trickled down onto the quilt. When I opened my eyes again, I went back to the year when my cousin came to my home. The glaring light was swaying above my head, and intense pain came from my lower body. Mom was beside the hospital bed, crying inconsolably. Ava, Vivian has told me everything about your breakup with Oscar. Love can't be forced. If you hadn't clung to Oscar, you wouldn't have run onto the road in a fit of pique and got hit. Fortunately, Vivian is okay. Otherwise, I wouldn't have the face to meet your aunt in the afterlife. I suppressed my anger and said with difficulty, "Do you believe everything Vivian said?" Mom subconsciously retorted, "Are you trying to accuse Vivian of lying again? Why can't you get rid of this bad habit? Your leg is broken. You'll have to rely on her for help in the future." With a bang, I pushed the cup on the bedside table to the floor and shouted hysterically, "Get out! Get out of here right now!" Looking at the official announcement photo of my cousin's narrow escape, my tears trickled down onto the quilt. Vivian, who had lived in my home for 6 years, snatched my room and Mom's love from me and also stole my boyfriend on the eve of our engagement. She ran to Oscar in a self-made wedding dress, looking pitiful as she cried, "I can't hide my feelings in my heart any longer. You love me too, right? Please, give me a chance to compete fairly." Oscar let go of my hand and pursed his lips without saying a word. Until the truck rushed over, he subconsciously rushed over to protect Vivian, leaving me lying in a pool of blood. The double pain of betrayal and physical injury made me fall unconscious. When I opened my eyes again, Oscar was sitting beside me, playing with my long eyelashes. "Little lazy cat, I was explaining the questions to you. Why did you fall asleep again?" Looking at Oscar, who was full of youthful charm, I was in a daze for a moment. Until there was a noise from the living room, I stood up. My leg was actually intact. "Ava, come out quickly. Your cousin will live in our home starting from today." Before I could feel the joy of standing up again, I was pulled back to reality by Mom's voice. This year, I was in the second year of senior high school. My aunt had an affair, and my uncle left for another city in a fit of anger. Mom was worried that it would affect Vivian's college entrance examination, so she took it upon herself to bring her home. Vivian had just come from her hometown at that time. She had dark skin and was plainly dressed, looking like a timid rural girl. Mom pushed her in front of me. "Vivian's foundation is not good. Starting from tomorrow, you should spare 2 hours every day to tutor her." The tone that brooked no refusal was exactly the same as in my previous life. My grades were not that good. Especially since I was brainwashed by Oscar to choose science in order to be with him. But Mom wouldn't take no for an answer. She said that it was because my aunt gave up her chance to go to school and stayed in the countryside to marry my useless uncle. "As my daughter, you should learn to repay your mother's debt." I was morally kidnapped. Although reluctant in my heart, I still went to help Vivian. I corrected her non-standard English pronunciation and let her pester Oscar to be our substitute science teacher. But how did Vivian repay me? She secretly changed my college application choices just to make sure that I couldn't be in the same city as Oscar. And she used the living expenses given by my mom to take the train to visit him at school again and again. All of this was told by my mom after my engagement, unexpectedly. "That sweet girl has liked Oscar for so long. She spent all her money on train tickets. Didn't she have to eat instant noodles and steamed buns usually? Isn't it ridiculous? All I lost was a pair of legs." But Vivian couldn't lose her love. Seeing that I stood there motionless, Mom got unhappy. "Ava, I'm warning you. Don't give the sweet girl a cold face." Before I could say anything, Oscar walked out with a frown. "Oscar, you're here today too." Mom put on a warm face. Oscar's family was well off and he was handsome. So she tacitly allowed us to help each other in our studies. The moment Vivian saw Oscar, her eyes seemed to light up. But he just glanced at Vivian with a look of disgust on his face. Well, at this moment, Vivian hadn't snatched my nice clothes, hadn't taken my expensive skin care products given by my aunt without asking, and was still wearing a rustic braid on her head. How could she catch Oscar's eye? Vivian seemed to be stabbed and showed a wronged expression on her face. Mom was still unaware of it and said enthusiastically to Oscar, "This is Ava's real cousin. You should also take care of her in the future." Oscar replied faintly. He was about to leave when he heard Mom instructing me to move rooms. "Ava, the sweet girl's eyesight is not good. Your room is brighter. Let her live in it for 2 years." In my previous life, I fought in vain and had to give up my room angrily. Vivian didn't just live there for 2 years. During the following 4 years of college, and even before the official announcement with Oscar, she had always occupied my room. Oscar knew all of this. At first, he was on my side and thought that Mom was partial. Until one time when I came back from my aunt's home and saw Oscar and Vivian coming out of my room together. Vivian's eyes were full of tears. That day, Oscar advised me not to be so petty. I shouldn't swallow up Vivian's share just because of the room issue for the gifts given by my wealthy aunt. I had a big fight with him. However, Oscar was very good at coaxing people. So much so that I didn't notice at all how he maintained our relationship as a couple while enjoying Vivian's gentle attentions. Coming back to this life again, the first thing that came to my mind was to stay away from them. I could live without love and without family affection, but I couldn't afford to lose my legs again. I turned around and went into my room to pack my luggage. Mom got worried. "Ava, what are you crazy about? Aren't you going to follow my instructions and give up your room? Then where are you going?" "Aunt's home is closer to the school, which is convenient for me to study hard." Mom's eyes turned red with anger. "Damn girl, you know your aunt looks down on me. Are you deliberately going to her just to make me angry?" Vivian also came to persuade me. "Cousin, it's my fault. I can live in the storage room. Please don't move out." She turned around and grabbed Oscar's arm. "Brother Oscar, I've heard a lot about you from Aunt. Please persuade cousin." Oscar quietly pushed her away and came over to hold down my luggage. "You can live in the same room with your cousin. There's no need to contradict your parents just because of a trifle." Oscar was very filial to his mother. In my previous life, I was often brainwashed by him, being told to listen to my parents more and not to easily conflict with my cousin. So, it was okay for me to live in the storage room, but it was not okay for me to run away from home. PUA is so terrifying. This time, I'm going to stay away from them. Ignoring everyone's words, I went to my aunt's home that night. The next day when I returned to school, I saw Oscar walking up the stairs with Vivian. "Ava, you're too headstrong. No matter how much you quarrel with your family, you shouldn't just leave like that. Vivian is new here and not familiar with the school. You're the older sister and should take more care of her." Vivian looked at Oscar affectionately. "Thank you, brother Oscar. Without you, I wouldn't know what to do." I looked on coldly. Oscar's expression was full of disgust, but I still noticed the curve of his lips. Well, there's no man who doesn't long to be adored by women. Even if the other person is an ugly woman. I ignored their conversation and said in a voice as cold as ice, "Oscar, if you want to take care of Vivian, do it yourself. Don't bother me any more in the future." He looked at me in disbelief. "Ava, what are you talking about? We've been doing homework together every day since junior high school." Vivian also tugged at my sleeve. "Cousin, what did I do wrong to make you so disgusted with me?" I impatiently shook her off. She fell backwards and her body involuntarily rolled down several stairs. Oscar was shocked and immediately carried her to the infirmary. I was stunned for a moment and then I smiled. Here we go again. Isn't what Vivian was best at the trick of pretending to fall while pregnant and framing others in TV dramas? This time, I'm going to use her hand to really get myself driven out of my home. Mom rushed to the school and without listening to any explanations, pointed at my nose and scolded angrily. "What's going on? Why did you push Vivian downstairs?" The school doctor had simply treated Vivian's wound. But she leaned weakly against Oscar with tears in her eyes, saying it hurt so much. Looking at her clinging tightly to his clothes, I couldn't help feeling stuffy in my chest. Mom pushed me. Why are you standing there? Hurry up and apologize to Vivian. No. I'm not wrong. She lost her balance and fell by herself. It has nothing to do with me. Mom grabbed my ear. Are you accusing Vivian wrongly again? The word wronged opened up my dusty memories. When I was a child, Vivian took a fancy to my crystal ball of the princess castle that Dad brought back from abroad. She was determined to snatch it. It was a gift from Dad. Of course, I didn't want to give it to her. She swung it hard, and the crystal ball dropped with fragments scattered all over the floor. I didn't react in time. Vivian sat on the ground with tears in her eyes, picked up the broken glass and scratched her calf. When Mom came in, she struggled to crawl over with an extremely wronged expression. Aunt, don't blame sister. She didn't do it on purpose. Vivian's voice was choked with sobs. Mom softened her heart at once and scolded me harshly. At that time, I didn't know that there were really people who thought that the weak were always in the right. So I stiffened my neck and argued based on reason. Mom was convinced that Vivian couldn't have deliberately hurt herself just to frame me. She called me a liar. She said that I refused to admit my mistakes after doing something wrong. The tone made it seem as if I was an extremely evil person who had done something bad. Vivian's tears welled up in her eyes. Don't quarrel because of me. Sister must have pushed me downstairs accidentally because she was angry that I took her room. I won't blame her. I ignored her and turned to ask the school doctor, excuse me, is it a soft tissue contusion or a fracture? It's just a scrape. Mom widened her eyes. How could it be? If it's just a minor injury, why would Vivian keep crying that it hurts? The school doctor shook his head helplessly. If you don't believe it, you can go to the hospital for an x-ray. I added fuel to the fire. Hurry up. If you're too late, the wound might heal. You. Mom was so angry that she couldn't say a word. Oscar's expression became solemn. He walked over and grabbed my wrist. Ava, no matter how seriously Vivian is injured. Since you were the one who took the first action, you should apologize. Ha! Was I too obedient before that I didn't notice that this guy actually liked to sympathize with the weak so much? I shook his hand off forcefully. Oscar staggered back 2 steps. I sneered and said, see? You guys started it first. I'm just acting in self-defense. Looking at my resolute and angry face, his expression showed hurt for a moment. But I ignored it. Ignoring my mother's shouting behind me, I walked away quickly. That night, I still didn't go home. My mother didn't come to look for me either. She took her beloved niece to the emergency room overnight. Vivian posted on Moments. In the 9-square grid of pictures, there was her calf that had been bandaged up nicely and her gratitude to Oscar. Of course, there was also the back view of my mother busy registering and getting medicine for her and the bone soup that my mother spent 2 hours cooking for her after seeing the doctor. The caption was quite heartwarming. Although I'm injured, there are still many people in the world who love me. I threw my phone aside. However, I was much calmer than before. It wasn't like this in my previous life. I had a fever of 39 degrees but my mother ignored it. She was in a hurry to take Vivian, who had acne breakouts, to a cosmetic hospital, saying that a very authoritative dermatologist had come and it might not be possible to make an appointment next time. At that time, I felt confused and aggrieved. Why was it like this? Clearly, I'm my mother's biological daughter. In this new life, I've understood a truth. Some things can't be forced. Including love. And the relationship between mother and daughter. My aunt brought out a plate of sunshine rose grapes that I liked. She had washed each grape clean, and they tasted very sweet. Ava, what are you looking at? Looking at how my mother favors my cousin. My mother didn't have a good relationship with my aunt. In the past, I tried my best not to say bad things about my mother in front of my aunt to avoid sowing discord and making the relationship between sisters-in-law even worse. But now there was nothing to hide. My aunt had a hot temper and got furious when she saw this. Your mother is such a sister-obsessed person. It's not enough that she helped your aunt pay off gambling debts. She treats her niece better than her own daughter. My aunt loved me very much. Even though she didn't like my mother, she still gave me many beautiful dresses. Although most of those things were sent back to our hometown by my mother for Vivian, and then sold by my aunt on the pretext of paying off the money she lost in mahjong games. Seeing that I was in low spirits, my aunt put her arm around my shoulders. Your cousin is so irresponsible. He's been running around everywhere since he graduated. You can stay at my home at ease and keep me company. The next day was the weekend. My aunt prepared a table full of shrimp dumplings, steamed twisted rolls, wontons, and soy milk for me. You're at the age of using your brain to study. You can't lack nutrition. My aunt used to run a restaurant and was very good at cooking. I ate until my belly was round. Someone outside was ringing the doorbell frantically. When I opened the door, it was my mother. She looked at my aunt angrily. Sister, you sent my husband to work in South America and now you want to abduct my daughter? The atmosphere was tense. My aunt didn't want to be outdone. Blame yourself for being incompetent. You can't keep your husband and you can't even keep your daughter. To be honest, in the past, when I heard my aunt's sharp-tongued remarks, I would subconsciously side with my mother. After all, I had been brainwashed by long-termism. My mother said that my aunt didn't support her marriage to my father from the very beginning and tried to break them up many times by force. Later, she introduced a high-paying job and tricked my father into working abroad. As a result, I didn't have my father's company, and our family of 3 was separated in different places all year round. With so many rumors of sowing discord, I naturally wasn't close to my aunt. Besides, at that time, my uncle was still alive, and her restaurant hadn't been transferred yet. Except for meeting during the spring festival, she was so busy that she could only ask others to send me things. However, in my previous life, when my leg was broken, my aunt rushed over like crazy and begged the doctor to save my leg no matter how much it cost. She was much better than my mother, who asked me to give my boyfriend to Vivian. The two sides were at odds. I was sitting on the side, cracking melon seeds and watching the show. My mother became angry out of embarrassment. Ava, are you stupid? All you know is eating. Hurry up and pack your luggage and come home with me. Your aunt doesn't know how to teach children at all. She only has a high school diploma, and your cousin only went to a junior college. You'll become a useless person if you stay here. My aunt put her hands on her hips and retorted, my diploma isn't high, but at least I'm a boss's wife. Isn't that better than you being a housewife all your life? These words hit my mother's sore spot. She refused to go out to look for a job on the pretext that I was too young, forced my father to hand over his salary card, and then took the money to subsidize her family. It's a pity that I had been brainwashed too thoroughly before. I believed that what my mother said was right. She sacrificed the opportunity to return to the workplace to take care of my life. People who have died once can see many things clearly. Devotion is sometimes another form of possessiveness. I didn't want my aunt to be bothered by these messy things, so I said, Mom, Vivian has taken over my room now. I'm not going back. My aunt looked at my mother with disdain and said casually, what a sin. I paid half of the money for your house at that time. Now you're using it to play the good guy. How thick is your face? I gestured and said seriously, probably thicker than the city wall. Our tacit cooperation made my aunt and me laugh. My mother's face turned as red as a pig's liver. She threw down harsh words and turned around and left. Ava, if you don't listen to me, you'll regret it sooner or later. The smile on the corner of my mouth disappeared. In the past, I was just too obedient. My mother thought that science subjects were good and it would be easy to make a lot of money in the future. Oscar also said that science subjects were good. If I chose science, I could be in the same class as him and we could go to the same university and study the same major in the future. So, I gave up the liberal arts that I was good at. It was like using an inferior horse to race against other superior horses. Besides studying hard, I was also forced by my mother to spare precious time to tutor Vivian, who had worse grades than me. The reason was that my English and Chinese were good. I had to help my cousin no matter what. In the end, I sacrificed my time to tutor her in liberal arts. Oscar became the science tutor for both of us, giving Vivian the opportunity to get along with him. Who was the fool who ended up with nothing? It was me whose life was ruined. Looking at the present, God has given me a chance to be reborn, and I must do everything I can to change my life. In the office, the head teacher said with difficulty, "Student Ava, our school has divided students into science and liberal arts classes since the first year of high school. I'm afraid you won't be able to keep up with the progress if you transfer classes at this time." I shook my head. The experiences in my previous life came to my mind. I studied science subjects that I wasn't good at. My college application was tampered with by Vivian, and was finally assigned to a school that was far away from both my home and Oscar. Not only was it hard for me to study, but I also wasted 4 years in vain. Finally, when I graduated and came back, I could only find a job that was neither good nor bad. Oscar laughed at me. "After getting married, just be a full-time housewife. Otherwise the little money you earn won't be enough for me to buy a few sets of clothes." I seemed gentle and obedient on the surface, but deep down, I was still proud. In order to get promoted and get a salary increase quickly, I worked hard to work overtime. Oscar blamed me for not being willing to spend time with him. Once, he accidentally let it slip, "Vivian is much more sensible than you. She can say countless sweet words for just a necklace. You should learn more about the skills of coaxing your boyfriend." I exploded when I heard that. If Vivian hadn't tampered with my college application, if my mother hadn't refused to let me repeat a year of study, and if Oscar hadn't come to persuade me every day, how could this situation have been so bad? Oscar knew that this was a thorn in my heart, so he quickly sent flowers and desserts to make up for it. He covered it up too well. And I trusted him too much. I thought that the feelings that started from our youth would always be as firm as before. In fact, behind my back, they had already hooked up. I took a deep breath. Since I've come back from the future, I should take advantage of the information gap and build up my life again. Seeing that he couldn't persuade me, the head teacher took out a document. "Ask your parents to sign it. Otherwise the school can't make arrangements." I was dumbfounded. My mother definitely wouldn't agree. Sure enough, when I got home, I was greeted with a barrage of scolding. "Great. After staying with your aunt for a few days, you've become so defiant. What's the future in liberal arts? You'll only be able to become a worthless clerk in the future." Vivian put on an act and came to persuade me. "Cousin, listen to Auntie. She loves you the most, and what she says definitely won't be wrong." I saw her eyes flickering. I knew that she didn't mean what she said. Vivian didn't want me to stay in the science class at all. She couldn't wait to have fewer chances to see Oscar. Only in this way would she have more opportunities to get ahead. However, it seemed that their interactions were not as many as in my previous life. That's right. Although I'm not good at science, my Chinese and English are very good. The essence of interpersonal communication is the exchange of interests. While Oscar was tutoring me in math, physics, and chemistry, I was also helping him improve his English and writing skills. Vivian was not only poor in science but also worse in liberal arts. I didn't listen to my mother's words and tutor Vivian for 2 hours every day like before. Oscar couldn't be patient enough to use his own time and energy to help her strengthen her pitifully weak foundation. I lowered my head and didn't say anything. My mother thought that she had grasped my weakness. "Ava, move back quickly. You know I hate your aunt the most, but you still live in her house to annoy me. Vivian's progress is a bit behind. You have to help her with tutoring. At most, I'll buy a bunk bed and let you live in the same room with her. I have to pay a price to live in my own room." "Who cares?" Looking up again, my gaze met my mother's confident face. "No need. I'll ask my aunt to call Dad and ask him to fly back as soon as possible to sign." "How dare you?" My mother's face instantly darkened. "Oscar stopped me on the school playground." "Why are you transferring to the liberal arts class? Is it to leave me?" "No. I just saw clearly the path I want to take and don't want to wrong myself just to accommodate others anymore." He was furious. Are you angry that I've been getting close to Vivian recently and are deliberately ignoring me? It was your mother who asked me to help with tutoring. She said that Vivian is your cousin and we'll all be family in the future. I opened my phone, opened Vivian's moments that was only visible to me and handed it to him. Is it just tutoring? In the moments that was only open to me, Vivian showed off the new mobile phone that my mother bought her, the large amount of money spent on curing her stubborn acne, which gave her a fair and delicate face to attract boys. Of course, there were even more important things. The first time Vivian ate Odin, the first time she took a Ferris wheel, and the first time she went to an ocean park were all with Oscar. Oscar got anxious. Ava, let me explain. Vivian begged me pitifully, saying that she really wanted to try those things. I took her out of sympathy. Stop talking. What you do has nothing to do with me anymore. After being reborn, I had thought about whether it was unfair to blame the adult Oscar's mistakes on the young him, but reality gave me the answer. In suspicious circumstances, people who don't know how to avoid suspicion don't deserve to be truly liked. Oscar was stunned for a long time and didn't say anything. I turned around and left. Light footsteps landed in a corner of the campus, bringing an inexplicable sense of steadiness. In this lifetime, I will measure the earth with my healthy legs and witness the beauty of the world. Only that I will no longer stop for insignificant people. Dad came back. He had a hard time making money abroad. There was a lot more gray in his temples, and his once handsome face was weathered. Mom turned a blind eye to it. She just snatched the wallet from him, not missing a single foreign currency note. Men go bad when they have money. I'll strip you clean. Don't talk nonsense in front of the child. Am I wrong? You listened to your sister and went so far away, leaving us mother and daughter behind. You're clearly having too much fun to think about home. The scene of their quarrel reminded me of many things. Mom and Dad had always had a bad relationship. Mom was extremely suspicious. Whenever Dad had contact with a female colleague, she would go to his workplace to make a scene. Over time, it hindered his career development. Aunt couldn't stand it and found him a high-paying job abroad where all his colleagues were men. At that time, Auntie was addicted to playing mahjong and owed a lot of money. Only then did Mom agree to let Dad go abroad on the condition that he handed over all his salary. Dad didn't tell me a lot of things when I was at school. He was afraid of affecting my grades and mood. Mom was also very good at distorting the truth. Clearly it was her fault, but when it reached my ears, it became Dad's and others' faults. In this regard, Vivian was really similar to Mom. Dad signed the documents for me to transfer to the liberal arts class. Mom sneered, "You'll ruin the child's life in the future, and then you'll know how to regret it." Dad didn't take it seriously. No matter how bad it is, I, as the father, will take care of it. My eyes were a bit moist. He stretched out his rough palm and gently stroked my head. "Since I'm back, I'll stay to celebrate your birthday with you before leaving." The birthday banquet was held in a restaurant. Just like in the previous life, Mom invited many classmates. She said that Vivian's birthday was only a few days apart from mine and asked everyone to take care of Vivian. Vivian showed up wearing a princess-style dress with delicate makeup on her face. She was dressed much more elaborately than me, the real birthday girl. Chloe, who got along well with me, complained, "This Vivian looks like a delicate little flower." She just arrived and pretended to be weak to attract boys. She not only clung to Oscar but also flirted with other boys. I listened casually. Chloe got impatient. "I know you don't like Oscar anymore, but don't you care that she's stealing your mom away from you?" Following her gaze, I saw Mom was on the phone with the people from the cake shop. "I've told you. Write 2 names on the cake. Highlight Vivian's name mainly, and just write Ava's initials." Chloe stood up for me. "Auntie, today is Ava's birthday. How can you not write her full name on the cake?" Mom was righteously indignant. "I've celebrated Ava's birthday for over 10 years. She ran away from home and ignored me. It's good enough that I leave her name on the cake." What a petty woman. I couldn't help laughing. "Mom, then why don't you say that the money for ordering the cake and buying the princess dress was all earned by Dad with hard work? You naughty girl. How dare you talk back to me?" Mom was obviously enraged and raised her hand, trying to slap me. But I dodged and looked at her with an extremely cold gaze. I don't know if it was an illusion. Mom shrank back a little. She didn't seem like the domineering mother who used to have me completely under her control at all. Is the parent-child relationship like a spring? When you're strong, she's weak, and when you're weak, she's strong. The banquet began. Oscar arrived with 2 gifts and handed one of them to me. Chloe whistled, "Oh, being fair to everyone." I refused to take it. Oscar was unhappy. "Ava, even if you're going to transfer to another class, you don't have to keep everyone at arm's length." Vivian rushed over holding her dress and pushed me aside. "Brother Oscar, did you bring me a gift?" Oscar had a strong sense of self-esteem. Having lost face because of me, he angrily stuffed both gifts to Vivian out of spite. "They're all for you." Looking at the boy's flushed face, I suddenly felt that my anger disappeared in an instant. In this lifetime, I have my own path to follow. But I'm destined to part ways with him. Why should I hold back my steps because of petty emotions? During the cake-cutting session, Vivian and I stood side by side. Being in the spotlight for the first time, she was excited and kept looking at Oscar from time to time. Taking advantage of Vivian's inattention, I pressed hard on the back of her head, grabbed her hair, and pushed her face into the cake. She let out a shrill scream. Just for a moment. Vivian's made-up face was covered with cream, and even her beautiful dress didn't escape. Mom rushed over to save the situation but was held up by Aunt who came to give gifts. The classmates were extremely excited and rushed forward one after another, throwing cake at Vivian. Only Oscar angrily grabbed my hand. "Enough, Ava. How could you become such a narrow-minded person?" Chloe stood in front of me. We agreed in advance that the theme of this birthday was to have a wild time. All the classmates who came knew about it. Are you the only one who didn't? The classmates whom I had bribed with snacks earlier sensibly echoed, "That's right." I watched from the sidelines. In my previous life's birthday, Mom gave the beautiful dress that Dad sent back to me to Vivian. She said, "You've worn everything when you were a kid. This is Vivian's first birthday banquet. Let her look good." I was full of resentment. When cutting the cake, Vivian pushed my head into the cake. Seeing that I was about to get angry, she hid behind Mom and blinked innocently. I saw on TV that it's customary to have a cake fight on birthdays. I was just giving her a taste of her own medicine. What's wrong with that? Mom cursed and scolded. She blamed me for ruining Vivian's birthday. Dad's face was gloomy. "Enough. Today is Ava's birthday. You took my money to buy a dress for an outsider and didn't write our daughter's name properly on the cake. Who's ruining whose birthday?" Vivian was too aggrieved to say a word. But my eyes felt a bit sore. For the sake of making a living, Dad hardly had time to accompany me. However, the clothes he sent back fit me very well, and the foreign language books and travel magazines he chose were just to my liking. Mom was disdainful and used the tone she often used to speak ill of Dad to sneer. "All you know is to buy flashy things for your daughter. You don't save the money for me." Breaking free from the confusion, I deeply felt that. Dad sailed far away with the waves, took on the storms for me, and then loved me with silent love. Before leaving, he handed me a bank card. Dad hesitated to speak, with a look of pity in his eyes. "This is the private money I saved for you. Don't let your mom know. You're finally 18 years old and can make your own brave decisions. If you want to stay at Aunt's house, go ahead. No one will stop you anymore." Later, I learned that, in order to prevent Mom from continuing to control my life, Dad threatened not to hand in his salary to force her to set me free. After transferring to the liberal arts class, I didn't spend any more time taking revenge on Vivian. Every second after being reborn was extremely precious. I absorbed the knowledge I had missed like a sponge, desperately trying to catch up. It was really nice to do what I was good at. Like a fish in water. With my hard work, I got into the top 10 in the first mock exam in Senior 3. Many people found it unbelievable. They didn't know how hard I had worked to catch up. During the summer vacation before Senior 3, I refused Oscar's invitation to travel and ignored Mom's request for me to go home and tutor Vivian. I held my textbooks and studied from morning till night. Aunt felt sorry for me and cooked delicious and nutritious meals in different ways every day and spent money to hire tutors for me. Vivian kept showing off in her WeChat moments. She posted pictures of the new dresses Mom bought for her, how Mom transformed my room beyond recognition for her, and how Mom mercilessly threw my favorite dolls to the homeless. The chances of Oscar showing up became fewer. I understood this. At first, he just wanted something new and let Vivian get close to him, and by the way, tried to stimulate me. But after I transferred to another class, my grades improved by leaps and bounds. My compositions were often taken by the teacher as model essays and circulated among different classes. Oscar started to panic. Especially when he saw Nathan, the future liberal arts champion, getting close to me. He couldn't help blocking me at the classroom door. Ava, did you transfer to the liberal arts class because of that guy? Girls are supposed to take care of their husbands and teach their children in the future. Is it necessary to be so outstanding? At that moment, I finally saw Oscar clearly. In my previous life, regardless of my hobbies and strengths, he tried every means to persuade me to choose science, just to clip my wings, so that he could have a girlfriend who knew him well and was gentle and obedient. However, isn't true love supposed to let the person you love fly towards higher goals? I looked up at Oscar, with a calm gaze. Before this, I wasn't familiar with him at all. However, who can say for sure about the future? As soon as I finished speaking, Nathan appeared. He swept a glance at Oscar with his light eyes like glass and said in a lazy voice, Ava, didn't we agree not to waste time on irrelevant people? Let's go. Speaking of my friendship with the top student, we have to go back to the summer vacation. I was expanding my extracurricular reading in the library. By accident, I found Nathan, the future liberal arts champion, playing photography. Thinking about what I wanted to do in the future, I took the initiative to approach him. Unexpectedly, we had a lot of common topics. I had a pleasant chat with Nathan. In the future, self-media would be a big hit. Choosing liberal arts could help me do better in copywriting and planning. He accepted my ideas and shared his condensed and refined class notes with me for free. Half a semester passed, and I became one of the top 3 students in the liberal arts class. Aunt was so happy that she couldn't close her mouth and said she would give me a big reward. I blinked my eyes, no need. Just call my cousin back. She didn't know what I was up to, but she did as I said. Cousin had always had bad grades since he was a kid. No matter how many times Aunt punished him with a rot 10 cane, it was useless. After graduating from junior college, my carefree cousin became addicted to traveling. He recorded what he saw and heard in words while traveling. When I came back during the winter vacation, I took my cousin to drink milk tea and asked Nathan to try to take food short videos for him. After shooting, I added captions and music and uploaded them to a short video website that would become very popular in the future. All of this didn't happen overnight. I planned potentially popular topics based on my memories of the previous life. Whenever I was free, I would drag Nathan to be the photographer and give on-site guidance to my cousin. Once, we met Oscar's family in a local specialty restaurant. He looked at me with a cold face. Ava, the college entrance examination is coming soon. How can you have the leisure to come out and play? Oscar's mother was even more aloof. Ava, long time no see. Why are you hanging out with dubious boys? Auntie tells you that girls don't need a high education level, but they should learn to avoid suspicion. Your grades are not as good as Oscar's, but it won't be a problem for you to take the exam in the same city as him. When you're close to each other, you have to take care of his life so that you can better take care of your husband and teach your children in the future. The long unheard lecture made my head ache. I looked coldly at Oscar and his mother. Who do you think you are? Why do you think I have to listen to you? Oscar got anxious. Ava, I didn't mind what happened before as I thought you were just going through a belated rebellious phase. But you can't talk to my mother like that. Apologize quickly. Only then did I realize how much I had been brainwashed before. Girls don't need to be too powerful. Girls should know how to be modest. Girls have to take on the task of taking care of men. An obedient girl can become a sacrifice for anyone but herself. However, what did my obedience bring me? A betraying boyfriend, a partial mother, or my legs being crushed? I splashed the freshly ordered lemon iced black tea onto his face. Someone who ranks 100 places lower than me in the whole grade doesn't deserve to talk to me. When I walked out of the restaurant, my cousin gave me a thumbs up. Ava, it's been a while. The coward has turned into a she-devil. You're so talkative. I stood on tiptoe to twist his ear, but then I noticed a faint smile on Nathan's lips. I don't know if it was to take revenge on me. Oscar, in a fit of pique, took Vivian out on frequent dates. His wonderful moments updates became once a day. The college entrance examination was approaching. Didn't these two need to study? Oscar's grades dropped quite a lot. Vivian's grades were as bad as mud, simply horrible to look at. Looking at the high-score test paper that had just been handed out, my heart was surprisingly calm. It turned out that the highest level of revenge on the other person was not to slap the other person while crying to vent one's anger, but to watch them sink into the mire while making oneself better. Nathan picked up the Chinese textbook and blocked it in front of me. Your brother's account gained another 500 followers yesterday. My eyes lit up. This was the eve of a long-awaited success. I smiled and enthusiastically patted his shoulder. Nathan, you've worked hard. You not only filmed well but also edited the post-production wonderfully. Then how are you going to repay me? What do you want? How about applying for the same university as me? Sure. I nodded without hesitation. Nathan reached out and touched my head, and a glimmer of light flashed in his eyes. It was bright and dazzling. The college entrance examination was just around the corner, and I knew there was still another obstacle. Although I no longer got entangled with Oscar, Vivian's eyes when she looked at me were still full of venom. There was nothing I could do. Who told me that I didn't listen to my mother and didn't spare time to tutor her? The tutor we hired soon asked for a price increase because Vivian's foundation was too poor, and Mom got so angry that she fired him. In Vivian's eyes, although I didn't have love anymore, I still had good grades. Just like in my previous life, she found someone to crack my password and went to an internet cafe to change it. Unfortunately, she missed a move. I had already asked someone to keep an eye on Vivian and took pictures of her dirty deeds. After the incident came to light, she knelt down and begged Mom to forgive her. Auntie, I'm just worried that you've raised cousin for 18 years, but she'll leave you behind and go far away. If she goes to study at a university in the capital city, she definitely won't come back to take care of you in your old age. Mom frowned and looked at me. Ava, Vivian is right. For a girl, there's no need to go so far away to study. I knew that she was afraid that I would completely break free from her control. Hee, then do you want to see what university your good niece has applied for me? It was a shabby school thousands of miles away from home. Unauthorized alteration of other people's information constitutes the crime of destroying computer information systems. In serious cases, it can be sentenced to fixed-term imprisonment of more than 5 years. Vivian still escaped punishment. Oscar, to take revenge on my indifference, used his connections to get her out. It didn't matter. The more privileges are used, the greater the hidden dangers will be. A gentleman takes revenge, even if it takes 10 years. Nathan and I went to register at a university in the capital city together. My cousin rented a house near the school. Our group of 3, like the Three Kingdoms strategist Zhuge Liang and his comrades, often discussed topics together. I even buried myself in polishing the copywriting until late at night. Gradually, my cousin became more relaxed and interesting in front of the camera, and the number of followers grew explosively. We seized the opportunity of the explosive growth of short video content, established a larger team on campus, and used our professional knowledge to create more high-quality accounts. Looking at the rapidly increasing numbers in the bank card, my cousin was extremely excited. He waved his hand grandly and planned to buy a sports car, but I stopped him. What's the matter? Can't I spend the money I've earned? A car is a consumable. It won't be worth much after a few years of driving. It's better to buy a house first and bring Auntie and my dad over in the future. My cousin is so considerate. No wonder my mom loves you the most. In our junior year, our company had grown to a considerable size, and there were more and more popular accounts under our banner, and we made a lot of money. Also in this year, Dad finally felt relieved and resigned from his job abroad and came to me to recuperate in peace. In my previous life, he got advanced gastric cancer in the middle and late stages but refused to be treated. He insisted on making a will to leave the house to me. This time, I took him to the best hospital for a gastroscopy in advance and successfully prevented the worst from happening. Dad didn't tell Mom about his resignation. When she didn't receive her salary for 2 consecutive months, she couldn't help getting angry. She sent a text message asking him if he planned to abandon his wife and daughter. Dad let out a long sigh. Auntie, looking at her younger brother who had become haggard from working hard to earn money over the years, advised him to tell me the truth of that year. Back then, Dad had a girl he liked very much. However, Mom took a fancy to him, forcibly got him drunk and had a relationship with him. Relying on being pregnant with me, Mom forced Dad to marry her. He couldn't bear to abort me, so he had to agree. Dad had a gentle temperament and seldom had conflicts with others. After marriage, he was controlled by Mom. Because of this, Auntie especially disliked her sister-in-law who was so scheming. But Dad said that since they were married, for the sake of the child, they should live a good life. But Mom was jealous. She didn't think that Dad really liked her. She equally hated every woman who appeared beside Dad, including me. I encouraged Dad to divorce. Mom rushed over that night and pointed at my nose and scolded loudly, "Heartless thing. I should have thrown you into the cesspit and drowned you back then." I listened quietly. When she had yelled enough, I asked, "At that time, did you follow Auntie's scheme, drug Dad, wear clothes similar to his first loves, and force him to sleep with you?" Mom stiffened her neck. "What do you know? If it weren't for Auntie's advice, you wouldn't even have been qualified to be born. Since I'm the tool for you to win in love, why do you like Vivian more than me?" Mom snorted coldly. "If it weren't for you, how could I have had premature birth with massive bleeding and almost died on the operating table? But your dad is an ungrateful wretch. He cared about going to the hospital to take care of you who was born prematurely and left me to the confinement nanny. You're just like that bitch, your dad's first love, and snatched his heart away. If I hadn't held you in my arms and threatened to jump off the building, he wouldn't have obediently handed over his salary. A woman's jealousy and possessiveness are so terrifying." I suddenly understood. There is no love or hatred without a reason in this world. Even between mother and daughter, the relationship can become unbalanced because of bickering. I didn't allow Dad to give money to Mom. She flew into a rage and made a scene at our company, accusing me of destroying the relationship between my parents. To force me to compromise, Mom called Auntie to come and support her. If I didn't want to make a big fuss, I should obediently listen to her. But unexpectedly, Auntie was addicted to gambling and lust, and she even dared to flirt with a drug-addicted gangster who had just been released from prison. In my previous life, Auntie died at the hands of this desperado. So, I had made early warnings. I hired bodyguards to follow me. Who would have thought that these two ignorant sisters planned to go and cry in front of the media? On the way, they encountered the drug-addicted gangster and were hacked in public. Auntie couldn't escape her fate. This time, Mom was also involved. When Vivian rushed over, she was pregnant. The child was Oscar's. During the college entrance examination that year, Oscar, just to spite me and regardless of the approaching exam, went to a hotel with Vivian. Both of them failed the exam. Oscar's mother didn't like Vivian at first. But she couldn't resist Oscar's satisfaction with her skills and told her mother that they could keep the child and get rid of the mother in the future. So, the Dew family sent them to a third-tier university. Having tasted the forbidden fruit, the two of them didn't focus on their studies at all. They moved to an off-campus apartment and lived a dissipated life. After several years of messing around, Vivian finally got pregnant with Oscar's child. Looking at the two corpses in the morgue, Vivian burst into tears. She held her big belly and wanted to hit me. "Ava, you're so cruel. You even killed your own mother." I held back my disgust. Why don't you say that the disaster was brought by your own mother? Over the years, you've learned a lot of ways to control men from Auntie, right? Don't blame me for not reminding you. Feeding all kinds of drugs to men will only harm the child. Vivian's face turned livid. Oscar grabbed my arm. I saw that his eyes were black-ringed and lifeless. Ava, what do you mean? Don't you know that my aunt always liked to use drugs to charm men? You must have taken a lot of tonics to have such a good time with her. However, this kind of drug is too strong and does great harm to men's kidneys. Otherwise, they wouldn't have messed around for several years before getting pregnant. Oscar choked Vivian's neck. No wonder you always asked me to take your family's tonic. Go to hell. I had no intention of watching the two of them fight and left resolutely. When Oscar came to me, he was carrying a physical examination report from the hospital. I really didn't expect that Vivian kept saying she loved me, but behind my back she was draining me and planned to use the child to control me. This is something passed down in the family. My aunt was like this, and she also used this trick to teach my mother to steal someone else's love. Ava, I didn't really like Vivian. At first I was with her just to spite you, but later I found it harder and harder to leave her. But from the moment you took her side I didn't like you anymore. Love is very pure. There's simply no room for a third person. Oscar held my arm. If I ask her to abort the child, can you come back and be with me? What a pipe dream. My career is booming. Oscar is someone who can't even get his diploma. During the tugging, Vivian showed up with bloodshot eyes, glaring at us deadly. Oscar, I love you so much. How could you ask her to abort our child for her? Oscar looked at her bulging belly with a look of disgust on his face. If it weren't for my mother wanting to use the grandson to fight for family property, how could I have let you get pregnant? I had no intention of watching any longer. I picked up the Hermes bag that Nathan gave me, turned around and left. Oscar wouldn't give up and chased after me desperately. When we walked to the intersection, a car rushed towards us like crazy. Thanks to the agility I had trained through sports in recent years, I quickly dodged. Oscar couldn't dodge in time and the car ran over his legs. Just like what happened to me back then. Vivian was taken into custody. The police obtained the examination report, which stated that she was affected by the death of her biological mother and had been taking hallucinogenic drugs for a long time, resulting in unstable mental condition. Although she was pregnant and had hurt others, she couldn't be sentenced immediately. Oscar's mother went crazy and wanted to take her to have an abortion as revenge, but was stopped by the female police officer. When going downstairs, Vivian showed a sarcastic smile to Oscar's mother. If I can't get something, I usually choose to destroy it. Just like when she couldn't get my crystal ball back then, she threw it on the ground. Oscar's mother broke free from the restraint, excitedly pushed her down the stairs, and then sued Vivian for intentional homicide in court. However, she didn't get any benefits after killing her own grandson. Oscar's grandfather soon announced the division of the family property. Knowing that Oscar had lost both his legs and his health was ruined, he simply abolished Oscar's right of inheritance. Oscar's mother was not convinced. She pushed Oscar in a wheelchair and demanded a redistribution of the family property. Otherwise, she threatened to expose all the dirty deeds of the Dew family and make everyone suffer. I added fuel to the fire. Taking the Dew family's cover-up of Vivian's tampering with my college application as an opportunity, I detonated a series of scandals. As the fuse, Oscar and his mother caused heavy losses to the family and were directly expelled from the family genealogy. Oscar asked me with a dejected look, "Why did you do things so thoroughly?" I gave a light laugh. "In the previous life, didn't you push me under the car to save Vivian?" His face turned pale. "I don't know what you're talking about. Stop pretending. After the car accident, you already remembered the things from the previous life." Before the ambulance arrived, I heard him shout out of control, "How could this be?" I clearly remembered that the person whose legs were broken by the car was Ava. Oscar finally lowered his noble head. "Ava, I was wrong. I shouldn't have been so bewitched by that bitch. Could you please forgive me?" "Why should I?" "In the previous life, after I broke my legs, Vivian showed off in front of me. Before snatching the marriage, She had already coaxed Oscar into bed and made him completely infatuated with her. Dirty bastard, don't touch me. I turned around and left. The sound of my healthy legs stepping on the high heels was really pleasant. Every cause has its effect. Perhaps this is Oscar's retribution. Not only did he have no money or education, but he could never stand up again in this life and ended up in poverty. Later, Vivian was jailed for the crime of intentional injury. Oscar's mother hated her for ruining her son and grandson, so she hired someone to break Vivian's legs in prison. Vivian fought back and wanted to sue her for killing the fetus in her womb until she was put in prison. The drama of them fighting each other was really exciting. Dad and Aunt are living a good life in the imperial capital. The brother and sister, who had been working hard for their children for most of their lives, finally had time to relax and take care of flowers and plants. Aunt, as always, liked to feed people. Son, I've stewed bird's nest for Ava. Take it to her at the company. Dad happily handed over a bag of things. Nathan likes the fried pancakes I made the most. Tell him to eat them while they're hot. My cousin puffed up his cheeks angrily. I'm a big internet celebrity with millions of followers. How can you treat me like a errand runner delivering dog food? Aunt didn't take it seriously and knocked on his head. Stop showing off. If it weren't for your sister and brother-in-law, you'd still be wandering outside and starving. My cousin brought the delicious food to the company and angrily complained to me and Nathan. I smiled at him. Fortunately, in the depth of time, there are always gentle people who leave their love for us.